can I help? Hi, yes. This is the Green Party, right? Yes, no, this is the Green Party. Green Party headquarters. What can I help you with? I was just here to find out how you worked. Yes, how we work. Okay. We don't normally get a lot of new members asking about that. Yeah, I've just, signed up, paid the direct debit, done all of that kind of stuff. And, I was just wondering whether there's some sort of handy guide. A handy guide? No, not really. Generally, people just seem to pick it up from each other. Do you have your badge and your clipboard? Yes, no, I've got the badge. Yes, I have the clipboard too. I've got the clipboard at home. I didn't bring it around with me. Does the badge do anything? Like, does it get you a discount somewhere? No, it doesn't. It doesn't get you a discount, really. It's more just for show. It's just to show you off to the world. It doesn't actually give you a discount anywhere, I don't think. So, why isn't there a guide? Why isn't there a guide? Okay, mate, look, we've got tons of stuff going on. We've got 230,000 members. We've got councils to run, by-elections to win. We got all sorts going on, okay? Like producing handy guides for how the internal machinations and the governance of the party is going. That's just not really on our, to-do list, really. Well, look, you've recruited like 200,000 members, all right? Do you not think that they should know how the party works? Well, look, maybe they should know how the party works, okay? But to be perfectly honest, I don't have the time to go make, an hour-long video about how the Green Party works? Like, what do you think I am? Some sort of partially employed, living with his mother, 30-year-old autistic man who lists the Green Party as his special interest, who's going to make a video about how the Green Party works, okay, and then post it on a YouTube channel. Is that who you think I am? Like, if you can go find one of them, go watch it, okay? But don't bother me. How does the Green Party work? This is a question that many of the thousands of members that have joined in the past year will be asking. And it's not a question that is easily answerable. It is certainly not a question that the Green Party itself seemingly wants to answer. So that's why we're here today. My guest, who I will be interviewing to answer the question of how does the Green Party work, has trammeled the depths and climbed the very heights of the Green Party as an institution. He has sat on all three of the main governance committees of the Green Party of England and Wales. He is currently a lecturer in digital... He is currently a senior lecturer in digital tech, innovation and business at the University of Staffordshire and a councillor on Stafford Borough Council and now in a coalition administration. My guest is Douglas Rouxel. How you doing, Doug?
I'm doing all right. It's warm today, but nice.
It's warm today, but it's nice. It's a balmy 21 degrees here in Hove. It's comfortable for once. So yes, how does the Green Party work? And we were just talking about this before, that there's not an easy go-to engageable way to talk about how the Green Party works. There's not a very clear top to bottom structure, which I guess is part of the thing.
No, it's not a set of systems that has been deliberately designed to work together. It's a set of systems that has evolved over time to become what it is. It's, we need to add that in so that we can have this. We need to add that in so we can have this. And it's kind of, built
Evolved.
up. Yeah, evolved, not designed.
Evolved, not designed. So I guess the best way is to go through your personal journey. So we're not like initially, I want to find out where you come from. So how did you join? Where did you come from, Doug? How did you come to join the Green Party?
So my background in terms of politics is through trade union organising. I was a trade unionist, an active trade unionist in my local trade union branch before I was a Green Party member. I did a lot of local trade union organising, certainly within my branch, but also working with local campaign organisations. This was in Southend at the time, so Southend Trades Council and those types of organisations. This was in the mid 2000s, so 2007, 8 is when I think 2006 I was first elected to my trade union branch committee, and then over a number of years I got involved in my regional committee within my union, which is UCU because I'm a lecturer, and then got involved in the Trades Council. Then the 2010 coalition came around, and there was a lot of anti-cuts organising, and I was a part of a local group which grew out of the Trades Council, organising anti-cuts demonstrations and kind of actions within the local council. And through that, I met people who were members of the Green Party. I was kind of interested in getting involved in organised politics, party politics, and they were the kind of group locally who were interesting to me. I knew someone who was active locally who was also on my union branch committee, and none of the other options were particularly attractive. Caroline Lucas had just been elected as the first MP, and in addition to that, the party was running a discount membership for under 30s. It was free to join for a year, so that was also very attractive to me.
Making it accessible, yes. And so when you joined, what was the first thing that you encountered?
So I knew people in the local party. We had local elections coming up, and they were like, "You should stand in this seat." So I became a paper candidate in a seat in Southend not very long after joining. So getting involved in the local party, getting involved in electoral politics, being a candidate, and so on and so forth was very much the beginning of that.
And how would you describe in the institution of the Green Party what is the local party? We talk, I think many of us, the first thing that we encounter is the local party. I had an experience very similar to yours in that I walked into the Brighton and Hove Green Party office coming back from university, and the first thing someone said is, "Do you want to be a councillor?" I'm like, but what is the local party?
So the local party is the kind of core constituent building block of almost everything that happens within the party at a local level, at a grassroots level. Most of the other parts of the party could function without to a greater or lesser extent. This is one way in which it's quite fundamentally different to other political parties, in that everything else is run and things happen to them, whereas the way in which local parties are structured is that they are reasonably autonomous to the party centrally, and they can operate, they are expected to operate financially autonomously. So the funding comes from the local party. It doesn't come from a central kind of money coming from elsewhere, which means that people get to decide locally how the money is spent, but also it means those people locally are in charge of funding it in the first place.
And really, what is the responsibilities of a local party? Is it just local elections, or does it go beyond that?
It's more the other way around. So it's elections locally, not just local elections. So like Westminster level, finding deposits, candidates, selection processes, ensuring that a good relationship exists with the central party, with the regional party, with party staff, all those types of things is a responsibility of the local party. Running regular, effective, organised actions and activities for local people to be involved with, to feel part of the local party and part of the party is really important. So it's not just it would be quite dry if it was just elections. It's kind of beyond just elections. It's the kind of
it's basically everything that you experience on like a week to week basis.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so to go beyond that, you've then got regional parties, and I believe Wales is in the constitution. Wales is it's a region, but it's a semi-autonomous region.
So it gets badged up with the list of regions. But we tend not to refer to it as a region.
Because it's not a region, it's a country. And I'm sure the Welsh are coming for me as we speak.
They're absolutely coming for you. So there's that side of it. Its level of autonomy. So regional parties operate reasonably autonomously from the central party. There's no kind of central party diktat. You must do this. You must do this. They have much less responsibilities now we've left the European Union. They were historically responsible for EU level elections, selections and those kind of things. In some regions, they've done a lot of work supporting target local constituencies and local parties and local wards and campaigns to ensure that people from places where there isn't target campaigns physically go and support people elsewhere. And where we've had Westminster target campaigns supporting those. A really good example in the West Midlands, where I'm now on the regional committee, is the North Herefordshire campaign. For a long time prior to the general election being called, that was our kind of, if people had time and if people were willing to travel to North Herefordshire, we would direct them towards going and supporting Ellie getting elected in North Herefordshire. So that's the kind of the regional level stuff. Wales, because they have a parliament, they obviously have all of the parliamentary elections there, but they also have a lot greater degree of financial independence from the party centrally, in that unlike local and regional parties in England, Wales receives their entire capitation and then they have a charge back to the central party for the things that they then get from that right across the board. So all of the money goes to Wales, and then they decide how that is then apportioned to local parties, unlike in England, where the region gets a specific amount, the local party gets a specific amount, and the rest is topside.
And just explain like what a capitation is.
So it's a proportion of the membership fee that members pay. It's because we have a kind of progressive scale of membership, it's not done on the actual amount that each individual member pays, because then if you lived in Surrey and everyone's paying the full amount, or you lived in somewhere where people are not maybe paying the full amount, you would get different amounts of money. It's based on an average amount that members pay. So it's the total amount of membership income divided by the number of members, and that gives you an average member payment, and then it's a percentage of that. I can't remember the exact numbers off the top.
No, I don't think anyone's expecting that. So you've joined the party, you've engaged with the local party, you've engaged with local elections, and those are all run by the local party. The national party can't tell you where and when and how to campaign. I'm correct?
No. They can encourage, and they do, encourage ways of campaigning, ways of selecting target candidates. They have soft methods for doing this in terms of the support they might give, the financial incentives they might give to that. But there is no, if you go, well, we're going to ignore you, then the party wouldn't be, unlike in other political parties, the party wouldn't be suspended or anything along those lines.
Yeah. So you've engaged with that. When do you start to get involved in the national party, and what does that look like, and how and why do you start to get involved?
I started getting involved pretty quickly. I was living in Essex, but also spending a lot of time in London. My background is in music and sound. I was working as a FE lecturer, but alongside being an FE lecturer, I worked as a audio visual technician, VJ, did a whole bunch of work for bands in London on a regular basis, bands, record labels, etc., etc. So I was in London quite a lot, so I would go into London on a regular basis, and both Green Left and the Green Party Trade Union Group did all their meetings in central London.
Back before the age of Zoom.
Yes.
Maybe Skype, but not Zoom.
Skype wasn't super prevalent either.
No, we used to use Skype, but no, it wasn't this like easy to use.
No, not at all. So they used to meet at Symphony Hall in central London, and I went along some of those meetings, met some interesting people who variously are either not involved in the party anymore or still are or whatever.
And can you explain what briefly, can you explain Green Party Trade Union Group and Green Left?
So the Green Party Trade Union Group is a group which exists to foster links between the party and the trade union movement broadly. And as someone who'd come in from the trade union movement to the party, this was something that was of interest to me. At the time, I was on the national executive of UCU, so I was a NEC member. So GPTU, the trade union group, met on a regular basis, worked with people involved in trade unions to kind of work effectively within their union to raise green issues within the union, which was something that I got a lot of support doing as an NEC member. I would talk to people and go, well, how should I approach this? And you can kind of bring in that kind of perspective to the union, which I did on a regular basis. And whenever there was kind of any kind of environmental question, I can remember sitting at a meeting and like literally the whole meeting turning and looking at me kind of, this is your bit.
There's Doug. He's the green man.
He's the green one. This is his bit. What's his thoughts on this kind of thing? So that was useful. Green Left is an interesting organisation. It's been around for longer than I've been in the party, and it was set up to further kind of socialist ideas within the party, and also foster connections with the wider kind of socialist left within the UK and internationally. In my opinion, historically, it did a really good job of this. I can remember certainly sort of around 2010, kind of being involved in Coalition of Resistance. The reason why the party was in any way involved in Coalition of Resistance at the time was because Green Left within the party organised for that and got motions passed at conference to that end. Had members of the NEC, it's not the NEC, members of the Green Party executive who were affiliated with Green Left, ran leadership election campaigns. So in the 2012 leadership election in particular, a successful campaigner from a left candidate, and organised with other groups. So one of the bits of work that I did with Green Left was organising both Watermelon and then an external newspaper, which was distributed at a lot of like anti-cuts marches and rallies across England. So I don't know, 10,000 copies of what newspaper called The Socialist went out in the early 2010s.
And so how did that progress? Like where did you go from engaging with these groups?
I started attending conference. So I started going to conference in 2011. So autumn 2011, which would have been Sheffield. And then when I went to conference in spring 2012, that sounds about right. There was a casual vacancy on Standing Orders Committee. There weren't enough people on it. And someone said, oh, you'd be really good at that. So I put myself forward.
Okay, and so we just hold that just a sec. So can you let's do a very brief, because you can go for ages on this. Let's do a very brief explainer on conference. What is it? Why were you there? How does it relate to the rest of the party?
So Green Party Conference is an open conference, which means if you are a member, you can register and turn up. There's no delegations, there's no mandating. Coming from a trade union background, this is very, very different. So I've been at the time I'd been a Congress delegate for my union for many, many years. You turn up, you are there to represent all of your members. You'd run a mandating meeting to discuss how you would vote and then your delegation, depending on how big it is. I've never been a member of a big branch within my union, so it's always just been me, but I know other...
Oh, do you mandate yourself?
No, the branch would mandate me.
Oh, no. I thought you were saying that you were the only member in your branch.
No, I would be the only delegate in my branch, whereas larger institutions might have 8, 10, 12 delegates. So the mandating is much more important in that context. So unlike that, Green Party conference, anyone can register, anyone can turn up. The flip side of that is you're entirely responsible for your own accommodation and travel, whereas Union Congress, your accommodation and travel is all sorted for you. So there's a back and forth balance to
But there is an access fund, because I've used that.
Yes. And actually, historically, so my first few conferences, I slept in what was called the crash space, which was a floor of a church hall, that I might have paid £5 for.
The crash space.
Yes, that's exactly what it was called, crash.
Oh, the crash space. Sorry, I thought you said the creche.
No, crash. As in, there was a space that you can crash on the floor and sleep.
Nice.
That died a death many years ago and isn't organised anymore, but it was a way of making conference far more accessible. Accommodation was very, very cheap because of it.
Whereas now, and this is from, like, I don't know whether you've ever used the Access Fund. I have. It's you tell the conference organisers what your why you specifically need to be there, because obviously funds aren't unlimited, and you tell people your circumstances, i.e. you work on the minimum wage, and they'll cover your conference fee, and they'll cover part of your travel and accommodation, but it's not fully comped, and it does help, to be honest.
Yeah, obviously it helps.
Yeah. Although in my case, I basically said the reason I'm there is that I proposed a motion and I think it's going to be heard. And then it wasn't, and I didn't turn up. So I just said, keep the money. It's fine. I don't need to be there.
Yeah.
But yeah, so but what is, I guess then it is what is conference?
Yeah, so the Constitution describes it as the supreme forum for discussion within the party. And it is the only place where members will come together to make decisions on the way the party operates and the policy positions that it holds. It's designed specifically for looking at those two very clear questions. What should our policy positions be on this range of issues, and how should we organise as an organisation? The kind of political tradition within our conferences is very different to a lot of trade union conferences, and very different to some other political parties, in that we don't do a lot of kind of here's this issue that we want to talk at length and describe, conference notes, yada 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 yada. That is very much outside the scope of our political tradition. We are very much it's an action focused conference. If what you are proposing isn't a do this thing, it doesn't come within the scope. It's not a space for kind of lengthy resolution. It's space for proposing action. And it differs a lot from a lot of kind of political conferences, and whether that's union or party in that way. Because our policy platform is designed and kind of proposed by our members. Yeah, we don't have there isn't kind of a policy kind of group that kind of disappears off and comes up with, here's the entire policy platform, like it or lump it. And we have a policy platform that's designed, developed, and agreed on by our members. And my personal feeling is I think that helps drive a degree of in personal investment, as in time and energy and effort, into creating that then translates to people being personally involved in the rest of the party. So they're like, I know that the policy is something that I agree with because I have a hand in shaping it, which is not what we find in many other political parties.
No. And when you first turned up to conference, it would have been about, you said it was 2011. Yeah. The party would have been a lot smaller then, a lot smaller than when I joined, when we were already growing to, I think, the peak of, I think it was 65,000 when I joined in 2015. I mean, how big was it? How big was it back then?
About 8,500 people.
Pardon?
About 8,500.
8,500. And how many people were turning up at that point?
200 or 300 would be a conference.
200 or 300 would be a conference, and now it's more in the range of I think 1,500.
Yeah.
So I think the percentage has gone down in that sense.
Yeah, they would have done.
Yeah. And so you came across this casual vacancy for SOC.
Yes.
And in true conference fashion, I'm going to ask you to explain the acronym. What is SOC?
So SOC is the Standing Orders Committee. It has two main jobs. The first one being the committee which organises and arranges the agenda for conference. So they receive all of the motions, they will process through all of those, work out which ones fit the rules and which ones don't, and then put those onto the agenda. Broadly, that's a reasonably straightforward job. It's mostly administrative. And at the time, we were literally in the process of transitioning away from that being paper, as in people would send you
letters.
Yes. I was on Standing Orders Committee at the tail end of that transition, and I was on Standing Orders Committee when we removed the ability for people to propose things by sending a letter. So letters were still a potential part of the organising of that. It was shifted mostly to emails. And then during that, things like online forms and those types of things are something that I brought in. But a lot of that kind of admin of bringing together all of that and turning it into a usable document was part of the work that I was doing. The other part of it is to be the final authority for interpreting the Constitution. So if someone says, this line here, in this specific situation, which is a real situation we've come across, what are we supposed to do? And Standing Orders Committee becomes an arbitrator to kind of come to an agreement where elsewhere in the party they've been unable to come to an agreement on what it's supposed to mean.
And, how exactly would like an ordinary member come to interact with the Standing Orders Committee? I mean, if you propose a motion, you'll have to possibly talk to some of them if you've written it improperly, but in the case of like constitutional rulings, do ordinary members come across Standing Orders Committee all that much?
Ideally not. It should be the case that an ordinary member never in their entire time of being in the party needs to come across Standing Orders Committee to ask for a ruling on the Constitution. There would be two reasons for that. One, ideally the Constitution is written well enough, that they don't have to. And two, people should be working it out for themselves. I think the priority the Constitution places on this is that we come to agreement through consensus. And that rather than running to an authority, the kind of political tradition within the party would be that we look for consensus in the way that we work.
Okay.
In terms of members coming across Standing Orders Committee, if they're attending conference, if they're engaging in the work of conference, that's far more likely and far more kind of common. They will. If they propose a motion, then Standing Orders Committee will make a judgment on that motion. Whether that's that it's in order or not, they will be involved in that. And then at conference, they tend to be the kind of stewards of the process. If there's any confusion, then someone will stand up. Certainly people came to know who I was within the party because if there was some kind of confusion, I would be the member of Standing Orders Committee who would stand up and explain what it was that was going on.
And they appoint the chairs of plenary.
Yeah.
And
so they do the chair appointments. They will appoint the ERO for running elections and a number of other roles. But yeah, so the outcome of their work, people will come across much more readily, and the process that they go through becomes more apparent, certainly on the agenda setting side.
And how long were you on Standing Orders Committee for?
I was a member of Standing Orders Committee for 5 consecutive terms. One of those was a half term, so it was only 4.5 years.
But quite a while.
Yeah, during the period of time when I was on it, when I was first on it, it was a 3 term maximum, and that was increased 2 5 terms whilst I was on it.
And that's a constitutional limit.
Yeah, it's a constitutional limit. You can't be on consecutively. You can't be on more than 5 terms. I then took a break from that, did other things, and came back and was on for a single term in 2019 through to 2020.
And so, when you were taking that break, what were you doing?
I was a member of the Green Party executive.
The Green Party executive, yes. We move on to our next body. So, Doug, what is the Green Party executive?
So, the Green Party executive is tasked with the day-to-day running of the party. So, they are in charge of financial decisions. They are the Green Party's employer. So, ultimately, they are the people who are responsible for the employment of all of the staff. They oversee this kind of strategic direction on a kind of, yes, the link between the lay membership and the operational kind of processes within the party. So if we want to kind of see how the way in which the HR processes are influenced by our politics, that comes through our executive.
And how is it constituted? So I know that in 2025 we voted to change how it's constituted, but I think it's important to explain what it is currently, because we're still in that transition, and what it's going to be.
So before we get to that, I'm actually,
if you're finding this video educational, instructive, useful in your own personal Green Party journey, please like, subscribe, and consider giving me some money at the Ko-fi link in the description. Thank you.
So, before we get to that, I'm going to actually talk a little bit about how the party got to the position it's in.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So, before GPEx was instituted in the very early 90s, let's not worry about the exact dates or the process too much, but before that, there was only the Green Party Council, and they did everything. What this proposed was an executive which was smaller than the party council, that would be slightly more nimble and would make just the specific decisions around the financial and operational side of things. At that time, the party did not employ any staff whatsoever. One of the roles that is no longer, or for many years has not been part of the executive, was the conferences coordinator. It's still the job role, which is held by a member of staff who's employed full-time to do that. Prior to it being a member of staff, that was a volunteer on the executive. And that's the type of roles that were taken on. So the person who was the chair of the executive took on effectively the role of being the CEO of the party prior to the party employing a CEO. And for roughly 15 years after that new system was implemented, there wasn't a CEO. That was employed much, much later, in kind of the mid 2000s, was when the party started to employ more senior members of staff. There was kind of a few administrators and people who would do kind of the membership side of things, phone calls, that kind of thing. But the party up to that point was almost exclusively run by volunteers. So the day-to-day running of the party was done by volunteers, and that was the role the executive did. Between then and now, there's been a process of transitioning away from them literally doing all of the day-to-day operation to being the kind of the political influence on that day-to-day operation. As we've grown from 3 members of staff, roughly 3-4 members of staff when I first joined the party, to however many we have now. I have absolutely no idea.
I have no idea either. Quite a few. They do seem to be popping up every day.
Yes, quite a few members of staff.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been a transition. But within that, there are specific individual roles which would be related to a particular area of operation. There is a policy development coordinator who coordinates the development of our policy platform. There is a local party support coordinator, which is the role that I had on the executive, which was looking after local parties, coordinating with regions. And at that time, a lot of the work was doing the development of what we now know as the field team. So the implementation of that, but also looking at membership, I first joined the executive 2017, so there's a huge surge in membership in 2015. A lot of those members only stayed for 1 year, and we had a substantial drop off. So we were looking at, well, what are the circumstances that means that we have, one, healthy growth in membership, and two, healthy retention of members, and how do we improve that retention, and looking at member journeys and a whole bunch of different things. One of the big things in the time period that I was there was a transition from single payments being the default to direct debit being the default. So people would pay on a direct debit as the main way that we would attract people to join the party rather than just a one-off payment. So you're not relying on them deciding to join the party again once every year. You're kind of encouraging them to take, if they no longer want to be a member, to take the active step to leave rather than the active step to join every year, which is much more complicated.
So as a member of the executive, how hands-on are you getting? Are you the person doing the single payments to direct debits, or are you directing members of staff?
So I think that's something that's changed substantially over the time since I was on the executive. I was a really hands-on member of the executive. I would write reports. I wrote quite a lengthy report on the membership data, challenging some assumptions that members and members of the executive had about our membership, how they behave, those types of things in terms of their, essentially, things like how old they are, how long they stay members, all those types of things. Attending workshops on member action and activity, liaising with a group of academics who research in that area, those types of things. But I was more hands-on than a lot of people were on the executive, and I think that would be very much uncommon now for people to get as involved and hands-on. But it's
could they? Yeah. Could they get more hands-on if they wanted to?
There's nothing to stop them, and I would very much encourage members of the executive to be as hands-on as they possibly can. I think there's a number of different areas where I think that becomes really important. The treasurer of the party is a member of the executive, and if the accounts, as a good example, are not right when they are filed with the Electoral Commission and through our audit, then they're individually on the hook. So that's one area where, and other members of the executive as well, to be really hands-on and understand our finances. But also in the area of responsibility, being able to kind of know the day-to-day and understand where those responsibilities are, what is happening, what's the future planning, where is it going in the future, what's the next step. Staff can be on top of whatever our membership looks like now, but where is our membership going to be in 5 years' time? Is a really useful question to ask, and and obviously I joined the executive just after we had a huge increase in membership, and there was a whole discussion of, well, where is it going to go next? What's the next step for that? And I said, well, we need to go, well, there's a good direction this might go, and there's a not so good direction this might go. There's kind of a level of ground between this, and we need to plan for all of those eventualities. One of the things that would worry me at the moment is us assuming that the good trajectory we're on in terms of membership is going to continue. And there's an assumption within the executive, maybe, I don't know, we hear virtually nothing from them. So yeah, being much more hands-on and having a good understanding of your brief, but also the brief, that whatever it is that underpins, right? Our finances are underpinned by our membership, whether we like it or not, they are. And we need to know where that is going in order to be able to plan where our finances are going. I've seen from the accounts that just got published earlier this month, we have put aside quite a substantial amount of cash. We are creating a surplus. We're putting aside savings for, I think, the first time in a good number of years, which is really, really positive. And I kind of, I'm very heartened to see that. It's how that gets used, how we then, when and how we spend that, I think is really important for anyone who's on the executive to understand. And
so with the executive, are the executive getting involved in the internal politics of the party? Are they setting a political direction? Are they getting involved in conference, and the policy decisions?
So I would see they are not, there's no requirement in their role for them to be doing that. My experience, however, is that people who are on that executive are probably want to be involved in that because it's something that they're interested in doing. And I think in order to do the role of a member of the executive well, you probably do need to be well connected to people within the party to understand the politics of the party, the feelings of how people kind of feel within the party. So going to meetings on a regular basis, meeting members of the party on a regular basis to have those discussions.
But they don't get, they can't directly influence conference decisions.
There are a small number of levers that they have to directly influence conference decisions. They can prioritize one thing per conference.
One thing
only on the agenda. They can go, that's quite low on the agenda and we'd like that to be much higher up. Beyond that, the fact that they are a member of the executive may, with some members, carry some weight. So they might go, hi, my name's Doug and I'm the local party support coordinator. This is an issue that covers that influences my area of work. This is why this is going to be a problem and we shouldn't do it. Or this is going to be really essential for this area of work and that's why we should do it.
And I think, an interesting example of that would have been a couple of motions that have come recently to make us comply with the Electoral Commission guidance recently. Those got prioritised to the top. So we had to hear them because it turns out the membership doesn't want to hear things that comply with the Electoral Commission guidance.
Because it's not very interesting and most people don't understand that if we don't comply with the Electoral Commission, then we cease to be a political party.
Yeah.
So how long were you on the executive for? Were there any standout moments there?
So I was on the executive for 3 years. I did one casual term and then a full term. So 1 year out of 2 years, and then a full 2-year term. Trying to think.
I mean, were you on for the 2017 election?
I was not. I was appointed literally the executive meeting after the 2017 election.
Yeah.
And
which was quite a low point for us, wasn't it?
The 2017 election was a low point for multi-party politics in the UK. It was the highest vote for the two main parties since the 1970s, I think. It was a low point for us. It was a low point for multi-party politics in the UK. We were not in a good place financially. We were making moves to recover financially at that point. If anyone wants to rehash the financial woes of the late 2010s for the party, then I'm really happy to do that. But I don't think it's very interesting. But I was more involved in the preparations for 2019. Or an election that might happen. I actually left prior to the 2019 general election. So between those two is the time period that I really...
The Brexit interregnum.
Yeah. So things like our success at the 2019 European elections and indeed local elections in 2019. That was the first year that we really saw a huge bounce in our numbers in terms of local elections on a national scale. The 2019 locals. To me, the thing that I think of in terms of the big success would probably be the field team. That wasn't me personally. That was a success for the party. I was involved in ensuring that was something that had buy-in from as many different sort of stakeholders, particularly.
And who are the field team?
So the field team is a team of staff who support local parties to win elections. Like when they were set up, that was their key role, was giving the right support for local parties who are likely to win seats, so that they definitely get those seats over the line, as many of those seats as possible over the line. So they do a role of technical support, what are the techniques that we need to use to do this, but also there's a degree to which they provide so there's a degree to which they provide kind of encouragement, enticement. I suppose there's a carrot kind of approach of kind of this is what you could achieve. So they have been instrumental in this, ensuring people are kind of skilled and informed and working as hard as they need to be to win elections at a local level. But also that has transitioned into supporting people to win at step up from that and beyond.
And I mean, before the field team existed, to support local parties, what was there,
a fairly hodgepodge patchwork of different people doing very different things who were largely employed at a regional level. So regions would say, if we go back to the 2012 leadership election, one of the key factors that was discussed in the 2012 leadership elections was what was described at the time as kind of the West Midlands model. The West Midlands employed a member of staff, initially part-time and then full-time, through individual donor support, so people paying in and paying a monthly donation to the region to employ somebody who would support people to win local elections. He would give them support, information, skills, techniques, examples, templates.
Kind of like going to the guerrilla fighters, training them up to use the RPGs, and then just letting them go ham.
Yeah, essentially. And so the region, the West Midlands, was the first one to have a member of staff who did that. That member of staff was Chris Williams, who's now our head of elections, right? So he was instrumental in kind of designing a lot of those things that we now use on a regular basis. But it was through the financial model of doing it. When Natalie Bennett was elected leader, she said that was what she wanted to roll out across the whole party. So that's 2012. By the time we actually get to 2016-17, that is what is happening. Yeah. Those regional staff are being brought into the central party and they are going out. They have a much more consistent approach to doing it. They have a consistent role description, a consistent kind of way of doing things, as well as a management structure to much more effectively support them. They're no longer employed by volunteers. They have full-time staff who are their managers and so on and so forth. So I think it regularized a lot of that, and it meant that come 2019, kind of a couple of years later, that was incredibly effective, right? That 2-year run into the 2019 local elections, and to a lesser extent the European elections, but is that to my mind, that 2019 local elections where we see one of those huge upticks in terms of the number of local councillors we got elected.
So the 2019 local elections, so you're not on GPEx anymore. We've had a really, really good year. We have the local elections in May. We've then go into the Europeans, which we didn't really know whether we were going to have. And then we have the general election in December, which everyone hated because it was wet and it was cold. And most of us got
in September 2019.
September 2019. So on a high point.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
On a high point. And what did you do after then, other than get soaked in the coldest general election, hopefully for the rest of our lives?
So we just got our first councillor elected in Stafford in 2019. So we had one elected in 2011, lost that seat in 2015, gained a different seat in 2019. And I did a lot of work locally, essentially, in 2019 through to late 2019, when Conference 2019, I got re-elected to the Standing Orders Committee. I did another year on Standing Orders Committee. And I was on Standing Orders Committee during the pandemic, facilitated pandemic conferences and did the not so easy work of ensuring we had conferences during the autumn 2020.
Yes. I think it was a difficult one, It was a difficult one. Zoom conference is never fun.
Yeah. So that I did that for a year, and then, as well as doing a lot of stuff locally, we decided locally we were going to try and win enough seats to have the balance of power on our local council and the next all-up borough council elections. So I was doing a lot locally, developing skills, templates, techniques, supporting other activists, working towards those elections which were going to be in 2023. So I did a lot of that alongside being on SOC for a bit, coming off SOC, off the Standing Orders Committee, and then in the July of 2021, I was elected to the Green Party Regional Council, as it was at the time.
Yes, which it no longer is. It's now just the council.
It's now just Green Party Council. So, and that's kind of the third kind of big committee, certainly historically, within the party, that does the kind of overarching governance of the party. And the council exists to kind of look after the well-being of the party and provide strategic direction and advice to the executive, as well as being kind of a space to discuss things between regions.
So with the council, it was the regional council. It is now just the council itself. And whereas before it was 2 members per region. So at one point you had Wales, which had less members than my local party, Brighton and Hove, and it had 2 members and 2 members on the council. Brighton and Hove was part of the South East, which had a lot more members besides, and also had 2 members. And now that's been moved to just the council, which is regularly elected amongst the entire membership, although that might change.
Well, that's things are always subject to change. That's the nature of a party which we have a kind of democratic tradition where we change.
But at the time of recording,
yes, at the time of recording,
just the council.
At the time of recording, we're transitioning from a regional structure where there's 2 people per region and 2 people from Wales to one where we use a single transferable vote to elect a block of people. The underlying logic of that is that why is a postcode, my postcode, so important to my politics? Personally, I don't necessarily make decisions on politics on the basis of exactly where a person lives. I make it on their values, and I make it on the approach that they want to take, and having a system that broadens out from purely kind of postcode politics allows us to do that. So I can go, I think there should be more people who are like me on the council. I think there should be more kind of left-wing academics. Isn't that a good thing? We should have more of that. Or maybe
we should
not.
Definitely have more left-wing academics in every part of society and politics whatsoever. More academics generally.
But maybe and other people will have their own personal view on what it is that's important to be there, and they can make decisions on that rather than going, these are the people who have the same set of postcodes that I do. Those are the ones I've got to choose from. And it doesn't give us that breadth of representation, right? And what this does mean is that we'll have a much lower barrier to entry, whereas having 2 seats is very close to a first past the post election where you have to have the support from almost a majority of people. We're now going into a situation where people will be able to be elected and be as elected as anyone else with a more minority support. And I think that will be better for the kind of broader, diverse representation within the party. And
so you were elected to the council for the West Midlands for 2 years. What were you doing at the time? So this was 2020, yeah?
Yes. 2021.
2021. So what were you doing on the council in 2021? If you can tell me.
Yeah, of course I can. So there's a range of different things that it does. There are kind of everyday stuff that is kind of work that's going on in the background and it's done on a regular basis. And there are kind of more kind of big ticket project stuff that will be worked on. In terms of the big ticket project stuff that I was working on, there was kind of a piece of work trying to get off the ground on improving turnout in our internal elections, which never really progressed properly, and a piece of work on changing the party structures, which is the structures that we are now discussing as being implemented. So that was substantially more successful than the work on turnout.
But it did take a while. It did take a while to get to 2025 when we started that transition.
I started working on the question of how should our structures work in 2014. So for me, it was about 11 years. Yeah. So it took a while for us to get there.
For you, though, it was 11 years.
I was personally involved at most of the steps through that between 2014 and 2025. Yes.
Yeah. But other people were there before you.
There had been previous attempts to make changes to the party structures, but at the point in 2014, there was a bit of a lull. There was nothing actively going on to make changes.
And I think I don't think we covered this actually. GPEx itself has also changed. So it's gone from the individual roles to chair, treasurer, and then non-portfolio.
Yes. I think this reflects the kind of the approach that the party is taking. There isn't a necessity to have that role anymore. You're not doing the individual job. It's not, it isn't like it was historically. The conferences coordinator organizes conference, right? That's still the case, but we have a member of staff who does that. The person who's in charge of, we had an external communications coordinator for many years. That was our press officer. That was the person who, when the press needed to speak to somebody, that is who they would speak to. We now employ somebody on a full-time basis, multiple people on a full-time basis to do all of that. So the need for all of those very, very narrow, specific people on our executive has very much disappeared. And having a smaller, agile decision-making body that can have that political influence, particularly through our CEO, but also to our kind of heads of, is I think, a much better approach.
You know, we're coming to the end. We're coming to the end of the conversation because you need to run off and go home for dinner. What kind of state do you think the party is in? Like, how healthy do you think it is in terms of this massive growth in membership and the structures as they currently stand? You know, like my local party has experienced quite a lot of growth. I feel like yours probably has as well. We're getting quite a lot of people coming in from Labour who don't necessarily, they come from different political traditions and they come from parties with delegate conferences and all of that, and people coming in from the trade union movement who wouldn't necessarily have engaged as well. And they look at our structures and they go, this doesn't seem like it can manage all of these people. Conference is one member, one vote. It can't possibly cope with being a mass party like it is. What is your take on that?
So if we just address the one member, one vote versus a delegate conference kind of question, on that specific question, I think that one of the reason I think that it's not a question of practical. The reality is that we are running a conference that is about as big as a delegate conference would be, right? So the difference that we would find is very much a background difference. The reality is, when I was attending delegate conferences for my union, I would attend the conference whether I was selected as a delegate for my branch or not. I would find another way of being delegated to attend, whether that's through my region or through an interest group. I was a young members delegate when I was a young person, and you would attend Congress by hook or by crook. And the reality is, we'll see that in the party. The other side of it is, I think that we have an incredibly healthy number of new people who attend our conference. If it was a delegate conference, then we would have people who were successful, popular, well-known within their local parties who would be selected as delegates. Whereas what we have now is, it can be up to half of all people at any one conference who are entirely new to conference, have never been before, and are not part of an entrenched, ingrained way of doing things, which a delegate system can kind of engender. So I think there's there are kind of underlying political qualities to our conference, which are incredibly positive because of it. The practicalities of it don't massively change, except there would be an expectation if it became a delegate conference that we would then start funding delegate places, and we would then start funding delegate transport and accommodation and all those types of things, which we currently don't do. And that's expensive. I think so. Just from a kind of practical brass tacks kind of situation, whether members donate money by paying for their own accommodation or members donate money by supporting the central party, that's where that money is going to come from. It's not going to magically come from anywhere else. In terms of, do I think that the structures can cope? I don't think it's that the structures can't cope. I think there's a degree to which maybe the people and personalities who have got themselves elected to positions maybe don't necessarily work as well together. I think they maybe don't know each other as well. I think having experienced conference where you would go to the pub in the evening and half the conference would be in the same pub, through to online conferences. And I think online conferences were like the zenith of people not really knowing each other and not really wanting to know each other and not accommodating each other. One of the reasons why people who maybe aren't from a similar political tradition to me in the party, I know them reasonably well. Jenny Jones is a really good example. We don't necessarily see eye to eye on a lot of political things, but I have a lot of respect for her because she's someone who I sat down and had a cup of tea with. Because when I was...
She is very nice. She has blocked me on Twitter, but she is very nice, like in person.
It's because everyone all attended all at once and people knew each other, there was a very human set of relationships that went on. I think the introduction of online and the introduction of everyone being on the other side of the computer has caused a lot of the issues that I think that we see within the party. We no longer have that level of human connection. So I think retaining the one member, one vote actually increases the level of human connection that we have. A delegate system would mean you just have the same people mandated year after year, because that's what happens in delegate systems. We would have less freshness. We would have less people coming in and challenging the status quo. I think that it would be more stagnant systematically than it is currently. So I don't think that the party has ever had structures that served it perfectly. But I don't think there is a set of structures that would serve it perfectly. I think that whatever we have is always going to be a balance between the things that work for it as a membership organisation and the things that work for it as a political party. And those are two slightly different things. And they are two things that we need to kind of balance.
And finally, I just want to ask that, like, this is something that's been percolating in my head. You know, one thing that has come up, you know, that's been raised with me is, you know, the system, like, you know, these systems aren't producing anything. You know, the rate of change inside the Green Party is very slow. You know, you've raised, you know, just changing its own structures takes a long time. Do you think that it is the structures of the Green Party that make it slow and unreactive and unproductive in some cases, you know, in terms of, for instance, Westminster, you know, election results? Or do you think it is the people, and do you think it is my personal hypothesis, the lack of membership organisation?
So lack of success at Westminster, I 100% think is people focused. I've sat in meetings, and I sat in meetings prior to 2024, a long time prior to 2024, asking, how are we going to get the number of MPs we've identified in our political strategy elected? And when we come out of 2024 elections, it's a great success. We got 4 MPs. We started with 1. We now have 4. But if we compare it to what was on the political strategy, there was 5. 5 was the target. So we didn't meet our targets that we set for ourselves. But the reason we didn't was people. Not going to go into details. There were meetings that I shouldn't really talk about, but it was very much people saying, no, we need to focus on this. We can't lose focus from this one thing that we should be looking at, because that's more important. So it's very much people. I'm being persuaded by people to do that thing rather than the thing that might be a priority for others. So yeah, I do think it's the way in which people exert influence and the specific people who have got themselves into situations where they can influence. Any structures that might have been in place at the time wouldn't have been able to address that issue.
And what do you think about the lack of membership organisation? You've got quite a lot of members spread out. I mean factions, basically.
Okay, yeah. I think that would drive engagement. I think that would drive one of the things that did work well, like Green Left as old. I personally, I don't feel Green Left is an organisation like it was a long time ago when I was kind of actively involved. I stopped being actively involved in kind of late 2014, early 2015. I think it did provide that. It provided a kind of a coherent focus for getting people into positions where they could have influence, whether that be at a regional level or at a local level or at a national level, supporting people to be candidates for the executive, to get them onto the executive, and then to have a particular perspective and persuasion and a line within that. And it was reasonably effective at doing that. And we don't have organisations within the party that are currently doing that. And I think that is to the party's detriment. I think that having more organisation, more discussions on how the party should be led, and I don't just mean in terms of the leader position itself. I mean in terms of those who are on the party council, those who are on the executive, those who take on regional roles, those who take on roles at local parties. The level of scrutiny and discussion, the kind of uncontested elections that allow a lot of people to get into these positions are a problem, and even down to ensuring that those things are contested. And they're contested along a coherent line of organisation, as opposed to what we have seen more recently, where they are contested on the basis of single issue questions that don't really drive us forward in any way.
Are you pro or are you anti-trans? Which was the main fault line, in my early membership. Especially. Yeah.
Prior to that, there was other single issue questions that dominated those conversations as well. But that has been for far too long. Whether or not you took a position either way on that dominated a question that should have been about, are you competent at doing the accounts? Do you have an understanding how membership organizations function? Do you understand how elections work? Are you able to hold our election staff to account and ensure that they do the right thing in terms of running our election campaigns in order that we will achieve our political strategy that we have set for ourselves? All these things are much more pertinent questions than that, and yet that has been the thing. And I think we have had people who weren't good at doing that because they would vote the right way on those questions, depending on who you asked. They would vote the right or wrong way on those questions for a certain group of people, but there was never a question, well, are they any good at doing the job? And I think that has been a quite substantial issue for us within the party. We haven't really prized competence in those roles as much as we should do,
or indeed wider politics. Yeah, look, Doug, you have provided a very comprehensive account of your own personal journey, but also the structures of the Green Party. I think it's been incredibly informative and educational, educational to me, and hopefully educational to the viewers. Thank you very much for talking to me today, and have a good dinner.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. Look, if you made it to the end of this video, thank you very much. Doug, I think, provided a great conversation about the way that the Green Party works, the way that people get involved, and the way that, there's a lot of discussion about, older Greens versus newer Greens. I think a lot of people will find Doug's journey into the Green Party, even though, we collectively are more tenured Green members, I think they'll find that relatable. And I really hope you found this educational. The way that the way that you get involved in the Green Party is knowing, the best way that you can get involved is knowing how it works. The best thing that you can do for yourself if you are going to engage is to educate yourself. My suggestions are to read the Constitution, to talk to older Green Party members who might perhaps know more, to watch videos like this. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe. Feel free to chuck me some money so I can work on making more. There is a link below to Ko-fi, and you can send me money, either on a one-off or a recurring basis. That's up to you. I appreciate every pound that you give me, and that will go to funding videos like this. I want to make more of them. I want to take my own advice and produce content about the Green Party and the Green Party movement that we're all a part of. Thank you very much indeed for your time today. I really hope that you find this useful. Please share it with your friends and your fellow Green Party members. Hopefully they will as well. And yeah, I will see you in the next video. Thank you.